Wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet before we can go ahead and get started. We've got to make sure that we're broadcasting, and YouTube always takes a little bit of time to get going, but it looks like things are rocking and rolling. The gears are grinding away, and we're live, so we can go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got a lot to get into. Joe Biden came out, gave a big speech on the coronavirus. He's going to implement a 9-point plan all throughout America that has some pretty serious consequences. We're talking about mandates for something like 80, maybe 100 million people across the country who have not been vaccinated at this point. And so we're going to go through this. It's a 6-point plan. Kind of has it all. It's got the vaccine mandates, got some of the school mandates. It's got testing requirements. It's got masking requirements. Kind of everything but the kitchen sinks being thrown at COVID, the same virus that, of course, was dealt with back on July 4th. We have to sort of redo everything that didn't work the last time again. So we're going to take a look at all of that from Joe Biden. We got several clips from him, and we're going to take a look at all of the 6 different little areas, the little silos that he's going to unveil for all of us in America. Then we're going to change gears. We're also going to stick with the Biden administration, but we're going to go over to the Department of Justice because the DOJ that is being led by Attorney General Merrick Garland, he is now suing Texas. So remember when Texas filed lawsuits and tried to kind of sue Pennsylvania, and that whole legal battle worked itself out with the Supreme Court. Texas has been in a lot of lawsuits, is my point. But now what's happening is the federal government, the DOJ, is suing Texas. And so they're unhappy about SB 8. This is the Texan abortion law that is causing a lot of problems for the liberals and people on the Democratic side of the aisle because the Supreme Court came out and said, yeah, that law's fine. It can go forward. And so the DOJ now, because Texas is implementing new laws that the Supreme Court is giving the thumbs up, the DOJ is coming right after Texas saying, you can't do that. We didn't give you permission to do that. And so we're going to take a look at that lawsuit. It's 27 pages, but we're not going to read through the whole thing. We'll just kind of clip out some of the highlights there so you can see yet again another example of the federal government coming into the states and just kind of breathing down their necks. We see a big pattern of this, especially in the last 2 years. And then in our last segment, we're going to check in with he's actually a current prosecutor, somebody by the name of Mark Jones, the district attorney out in Chattahoochee, I believe is where he's from. And this guy just got indicted. A prosecutor got indicted, meaning he's being charged with 9 different crimes for things like bribery, violations of oath of office, influencing witnesses. Terrible. Very bad district attorney. And so we're going to go through that, take a look at that indictment as well. If you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where they're chatting away over there. Let's see who's in it. We've got Ken in it. We have Gail08. We have Look 2G's over there along with J.M. Shanahan. We have George Klaus and Sweet Potatoes over there with K-Cell. 3 girlies, as always. Farmer's Daughters in the house. And we've got Jeremy Matrita, Want to Know. Man, it's active over there. We got the chat off a little early today because we were talking about Joe Biden. So we were chatting since about 3 o'clock. And so that was a good time. Over on YouTube, we've got shout outs to Ruth Delta wishing me a belated happy birthday. Thank you, Ruth. That's very nice. We have Too Legit to Quit. We have Danette in the house. We have Terry Fieldman. Travis Reed is here. Sarah Brown and A Straight and Arrow as well. And so we've got a lot to get to. If you're over on Locals and you want to be a part of the show, This is the form that we use where you can submit your questions. And of course, we are taking super chats as well. K Bean threw one in here already. Says, is the U.S. Postal Service considered part of the mandate? So I saw a tweet on that. We're going to get to that in a minute. But the short answer is I saw the White House said, no, they're not, which is going to be part of the segment that we're about to get to. And we'll replay that super chat as well. But that's what it looks like if you want to support us on YouTube as well. All right, so without, nope, I've got one more slide. I always forget it. Hello. If you're looking for the clips, I'd appreciate it if you went over and subscribe to our clips channel. That way we can sort of grow that channel as well. It can become a self-sustaining channel, and we can continue to clip those clips so that people can enjoy them. All right, that is the last thing. Now, without any further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Joe Biden just unveiled a national vaccine mandate. Now, of course, he's not going to use that term. He's not going to say he nationalized anything, but this is the reality now. He came out with a 6-point plan. This is what it looks like. They posted this over there at whitehouse.gov/COVID plan. So we're going to go through it. You're going to see that there are a couple things that are probably going to draw your attention. Vaccinating the unvaccinated. This is one of the big pillars we can see here. The first one, Joe Biden very angry about this, sort of blaming a lot of the unvaccinated people for everything that's going on in the country. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We've been hearing that line for a long time, but he is renewing that. We also have further protecting the vaccinated because the vaccine apparently isn't sufficient in and of itself. And so they've got to make sure that they're protecting the vaccinated. Keeping schools open. We've seen this being a big debate over the last 2 years or so. And so he had some pointers there. Basically, a lot of the same stuff, getting vaccinated, wearing masks, all the same stuff. Increasing testing and requiring masking. So those aren't going anywhere. Remember when the CDC came out and they said something like, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. Well, no, that's not happening. Going to rewind that clock a little bit. Protecting our economic recovery. Not a lot here other than just saying, oh, we're going to just print more money and make that available. And then improving care for those with COVID-19. So we're going to go through all of this. Now, my initial reaction to this entire speech, it's about 30 minutes. Of course, he didn't take any questions. Again, he just came out, read from the teleprompter. Pretty significant speech given the fact that hundreds or tens of millions, let's say at minimum, of Americans are now going to be mandated, required through the executive branch, through Joe Biden's office, to go and get vaccinated. Kind of a big deal. We're talking about a lot of people. It's a mandate. If they don't do it, there are going to be some pretty serious consequences there. And so as I was watching this, I was trying to think of all the things that we were hearing and all of the things that we weren't hearing. Joe Biden was talking about these 6 things, of course, we have them there, but there's a lot of stuff that he didn't talk about. And so we're going to save that for the end of this presentation. And we're going to do some issue spotting. We're going to say, okay, now we see what the plan is. Now we've got to talk about some of the practicalities, and maybe we can theorize about where this is going to go. So these are the 6 pillars. Joe Biden was very angry today, and he was very scolding. And for the unifying president, for the man who was supposed to come out and bring Republicans together and bring Democrats together, and he gave that stupid unity speech when he took office, we were all saying that's never going to happen. And we're not even 9 months into this thing, and he is now directly pitting Americans against other Americans. He's saying specifically, vaccinated people are responsible for a lot of this. Unvaccinated people are responsible for a lot of this. All of the problems throughout the world are caused by anybody who is not listening to Dr. Fauci. You just listen to him, listen to Joe Biden, and everything will get better. Of course, that is not where this is going. He's now pitting Americans against one another, and he's using language like, my patience is wearing thin. This is an American president saying, hey, listen, Americans, my patience is wearing thin with you. Do what I say or else. Here's Joe Biden today from a speech from the White House.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this. What more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see? We've made vaccinations free, safe, and convenient. The vaccine has FDA approval. Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
What?
And your refusal has cost all of us.
What?
So please do the right thing. But just don't take it from me. Listen to the voices of unvaccinated Americans who are lying in hospital beds, taking their final breath saying, if only I'd gotten vaccinated. If only. It's a tragedy. Please don't let it become yours.
All right, so he's kind of conflating two things there. First of all, the president is telling huge portions of America that his patience is wearing thin with you. Your father, your lord, your overlord, your dictator is telling you he's wearing, listen, Robbie, it's time for you to stop misbehaving. We've been indulging your misbehavior for some period of time, but it's not time for that anymore. You're about to get in trouble. My patience is wearing thin with you. So I love it when our leaders are scolding us, actual, fully autonomous American human beings who can make decisions for ourselves. This lunatic thinks that he can come out here and look down his nose at the rest of us and that his patience is wearing thin. Yeah, okay. All right. So that's fine. So that's where this is going then, I guess. His patience is wearing thin with us. It's a veiled threat. What comes next? I don't know. But that's the president of the United States. Those are about as close to fighting words as you can get from a president towards his own citizenry. My patience is wearing thin. And then he conflates that if you are unvaccinated, you're a person who is now responsible for the deaths of other people. You're actually like murdering them, which is weird because if you're vaccinated, then the concept being that our federal government has been telling us is that you're safe from death and you're safe from severe reactions to COVID. And so how could an unvaccinated person spreading coronavirus to somebody with the vaccine be responsible for their deaths? I don't know. But he sort of conflates that. Did you see how he meandered that into that people are dying in hospital beds, right? And it's kind of two things at the same time. Don't you let that be you, which is where that thought ended up. But he brought us there by sort of implying that if you're not vaccinated, that you are putting other people there, right? You're the person who is putting that person in the bed. And then by the time he got to the end of his analysis, he flipped that into, don't let that be you, right? So very sneaky, very sinister. So for somebody who's supposed to be so unifying, we have a very, very different tone here, saying that my patience is wearing thin. Rather than I'm a president for all Americans, I'm somebody here who's supposed to bring the country together and come up with solutions for a lot of the hesitant people. Not the case anymore. Our patience is wearing thin. You know what comes after that. When your father said something like that to you, the next step usually wasn't good. So what we have here is Joe Biden now, scolding half the country. And a large part of these people that he's scolding are his own voters, right? The people who are not getting vaccinated largely are people from different minority communities calling out African Americans specifically, and the Hispanic community that many data have shown time after time again, their vaccination rates are low. They're skeptical, and many people believe for good reason, which is a strange tactic if those make up a big part of your underlying constituency. If you're a Democrat, well, the African American community, that demographic votes for you in large swaths. Joe Biden coming out and saying, oh, all of you people, our patience is wearing thin with you. Do what we say, follow orders. I don't know how that's a good strategy politically, but maybe his numbers are so far in the tank that he's not thinking about those things. So back on the website over at White House, it says the president's plan is going to reduce the number of unvaccinated Americans. How? By using regulatory powers, right? That's it. So they're just going to take their regulatory powers, and these are sort of natural powers that exist out of the executive branch. When we talk about the structure of government, many people are asking, well, how the hell can he do this, right? Congress didn't pass a law. Nobody, no judge came out and made a ruling that this is now mandatory based on some underlying constitutional provision. None of that happened at all. All that happened is Joe Biden came out and said, well, I've got an idea that's been bouncing around over here, and we're going to start to implement this thing. How is that possible? Well, because when we study the structure of government, we remember that the legislative branch, which is our Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, they're responsible for drafting the law, right? They create the law that's supposed to be the embodiment of the will of the American people through their voting mechanisms. It's representative democracy. We get new laws in place. They pass it. Then the courts are responsible for deciding what that law is, right? When there's a conflict about it, the courts decide what it is. And the executive branch, they implement the law. And so a lot of times Congress has a lot of difficulty with being clear on the law, and they give the executive branch a lot of leeway, a lot of discretion in the implementation of it. They say, hey, this is what we want to accomplish. How you get us there, we don't really care. We're Congress. What do we care? And so they give a lot of the implementation authority over to the executive branch. And that's exactly what Joe Biden is using, those regulatory implementation powers. He says that they're going to substantially increase the number of Americans that are covered by the vaccines. These requirements, he says, will become dominant in the workplace. Dominant. So this is where it should be, right? This is going to be the new default. The new default is Vaccine mandates to get a job in America. In addition, the plan will provide paid time off for most workers in the country. So, small business owners are going to be stuck with that as well. And one of the biggest, most, impactful things here is all employers are now going to be required, as long as they have 100 plus employees, to ensure their workers are vaccinated or tested weekly. Okay, so totally private business. You have 101 employees, and now you have a new policy. You might say, well, I'm a freedom-loving person. I don't have 100 people yet, but do you think it's going to stop there? Do you think it's going to stop at 100? The next line will be 75, then 50, then 40, then 10, then everybody, then sole proprietors. Even if you're your own person, if you want to engage in interstate commerce, well, you're kind of in the power or the jurisdiction of the federal government. So they're going to get to, of course, mandate that, starting at the top, only for the big people, with the big break rooms and the big conferences, but then it's slowly going to start to work its way down. And so kind of shocking that that's a thing now. Private companies now, the federal government can mandate you have to implement these policies that tell your individual employees what to put in their bodies. You're not their doctor. You're not their religious, spiritual counselor. You're just their employer. They're your employee, and now you have to comply with this new government mandate. The Department of Labor is the division over from the executive branch that's going to be cramming this down everybody's throat. They form OSHA, which requires all employers with 100 or more people to do this. If they're unvaccinated, they got to produce a negative test result at least on a weekly basis. So who's going to keep track of that? Who's responsible for all this compliance? OSHA is going to issue another emergency temporary standard to implement this requirement. It's going to impact 80 million workers in private sector businesses with 100 plus employees. 80 million workers, 80 million people by executive order that Joe Biden just, with the stroke of a pen, you have to go do this. The businesses have to comply with this. What happens if the businesses have workforce problems? What if 5% of their workforce says, no thanks, we're not going to do that, right? That's 5 employees that are gone. You know how hard it is to find employees right now and get them trained up and onboarded? It's not easy. And so now this could have a catastrophic effect on certain businesses. What about trucking companies? What about the different companies, like different unions that have strong objections to this? It's insane. We already have supply chain problems. What's this going to do economically? Not good. So it extends, of course. It's one of the most insane things I've seen. I was not expecting this. I was expecting this. I would say I wasn't. 2 years ago, if you would have said, Rob, this was something that was coming, I would have said there's no way. No way it happens in 2021. But here it is. We have requiring vaccinations for all federal workers and for millions of contractors that do business with the federal government. So Joe Biden was also pretty fiery here. He said that the announcement in July is going to strengthen requirements. He's going to sign an executive order directing that this standard be applied to everybody. Going to cover another 2.5 million people. So if you're a federal worker, there was already a requirement there, right? He announced this in July that it applied to federal workers. But at that time, there was, I think, an exception to the rule. Now there's no longer an exception. And it also goes beyond that. It goes to contractors. So if you're a private party that's just working on a government contract, like you're repairing telephone lines or something like that, if you want your business to continue to contract with the government, then, well, you got to get vaccinated. That's a term of compliance. And we've talked about this a lot, the power of the purse. Does the federal government really have the right to go in and say, Robert Gruler, you specifically, individually have to take this jab? No, not really. But they have a lot of different mechanisms in order to do that. They have the ability through OSHA, through the power of the purse, through holding money and manipulating that money around. They can create some very strong incentives to require you to go and get vaccinated. If you want a government contract, there's a checkbox. Do you have a vaccine policy? Is your company all vaccinated pursuant to Joe Biden's executive order? Yes or no? Yes, you get the contract. No, you don't. So that's another very, very interesting development. They're also requiring COVID-19 vaccines for over 17 million healthcare workers. And we saw that in prior numbers that big swaths, big populations of nurses and other medical professionals were not getting the vaccine. Many people were wondering why. Well, that's kind of weird. If they're in there all the time, why are their vaccine numbers so low? Strange. And so what happens if they don't want to get the vaccine? What happens if 17 million healthcare workers decide, you know what, this is not that good of a job for me anymore, sort of getting treated like garbage and being thrown around like meat, and they just decide to do something else? So the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, so how are they going to implement that? How are they going to force 17 million healthcare workers to do it? Well, it's money. If you want to get government money through Medicare and Medicaid, well, you've got to get vaccinated, just like the private businesses. They're going into the health facilities also. This action builds on the vaccine requirements for nursing facilities. These requirements apply to approximately 50,000 providers, cover a majority of the healthcare workers across the country. Some have already begun to do this anyways. So it's the same threshold, essentially, right? It's the same concept here. They can't go into the businesses and tell you you have to go get jabbed. But if you want to get that government contract for Medicare or for Medicaid, which all of the different healthcare providers do, you have to comply with that. So it's pernicious. And a lot of these different entities are relying on that government money. They've been getting that government money for a long time with the stroke of a pen. What do? Even if you have business owners who say, this is outrageous, right? But now you have to have a hard conversation with yourself. You have to ask yourself, do I take a stand here? Do I put my business on the line and jeopardize the financial security of my employees, right? Because let's say you do that. Let's say you're in one of these businesses that gets a government contract. You have over 100 employees or maybe 10 employees if it's just a government contract, and you want to not do what the government is mandating you do. But if you do that, you're going to jeopardize the contract that keeps your business in existence, and that might be a harsher severity consequence for your own employees, right? Because now not only do they not have to get vaccinated, that's true, but they also don't have a job anymore. So they got to go home and figure out what to do about that. So your business owner took a stand. Great. I'm not going to get my employees, I'm not going to mandate that they get vaccinated. That's fine. You go out of business. That's a pretty strong incentive to sort of just twist people's arm into go and just mandating to everybody. Sorry, look, and blame the government. Nothing I can do about this. It's Joe Biden. You got to go get vaccinated now. Wow. Also calling on large entertainment venues to require proof, right? So it's not really doing much on that other than just a big ask. Calling on them. We also have requiring employers to provide paid time off. So, another... Wonder if the government's going to reimburse anybody for that. Probably not. So it's just another sort of thing that small business has to do in order to comply with the government regulatory framework. So it's also insane. But here is Joe Biden again. We have another clip from him essentially pitting the vaccinated against the unvaccinated, talking yet again about basically being responsible for killing people. Here is the president of the United States, Joe Biden.
The vast majority of Americans are doing the right thing. Nearly 3/4 of the eligible have gotten at least one shot, but 1/4 has not gotten any. That's nearly 80 million Americans not vaccinated.
Okay.
And a country as large as ours, that's 25% minority. That 25% can cause a lot of damage, and they are.
What?
The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals.
What?
Are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer.
All right, it's pancreatitis there, Joe. But it's something else to say that, right? The Rolling Stone came out with that stupid article a couple days ago. I didn't get a chance to clip it for the show today, but they came out and they said that in some town somewhere there are hospitals that are just overrunning with bodies. Basically, they can't admit people into the ICU, and they named a hospital, and then the author or one of the doctors at the hospital penned a response and said it's all inaccurate. None of that's true at all. And so there was a conversation taking place over on Locals before we hopped in here about are hospitals really, overflowing with bodies? Are people really not getting their surgery and all of those things? I thought that the medical system was supposed to compensate for these types of overflows the last 2 weeks that we had to slow the spread last year. Wasn't that the entire point of the 2 weeks? It was to slow the spread so that our medical capabilities could ramp up, so that they could process people coming through there. It's been over a year. It's been a year and a half now. Are they still they still don't have capacity to do this? Why is that? Or is it all just a bunch of nonsense, right? Now, I don't know. But here is Joe Biden. We just heard that. He's telling Americans, you're clogging the hospitals. Certain Americans, you heard him, right? The language. Pay close attention to that. Certain Americans, 75% are doing the right thing. Everybody else, you're doing the wrong thing. A quarter of the country, 80 million people, you're doing the wrong thing. Okay, and a huge portion of those 80 million people are his voters who are who are not vaccinated at the same rates as other individuals. Now, it's a wild thing to watch this. He's also talking about keeping schools safely open. The FDA is undergoing a process now to evaluate a vaccine for children under the age of 12. So it just keeps going. You give an inch, they take a mile. Under the president's plan, the administration will do whatever it takes to support those efforts, whatever it takes, while continuing to respect and defer to the scientific decision-making of the agency, which is, of course, it blows with the wind. Teachers' unions want the masking guidelines changed. Boom, Rochelle Walensky changes it. No problem. You've got the World Health Organization saying, maybe boosters shouldn't go out to everybody. Joe Biden, we're going to see here in a minute, wants those out in September. So is it really the science now? That card has kind of been played, right? It's pretty obviously not the science. It's pretty evident that when you're requiring students who are unvaccinated to not participate in virtual classes, doesn't seem like it's about saving lives at that point in time. Seems it's a lot more about compliance, which of course we all know it is. Requiring staff in Head Start programs, DOD schools, Bureau of Indian Educated Operated Schools to all get vaccinated, so another mandate there. They're also calling on all states to adopt vaccine requirements for all school employees. You can see that as well. So calling on them right now, we're going to see what that leverage looks like, providing additional funding to school districts for safe school reopening, including backfilling salaries that were withheld by states. Remember that? We're going to talk about that in the next segment. I have a list of all the different ways that the federal government has just been dumping all over the states over the last 9 months or so. And so we're going to go through that list. But of course, this is one of those things on the list is different states said, well, we're local here and we know how we want to run our local schools. And so we're going to, through the democratic process, make some changes to how things run. And they implemented those changes. And the federal government came out from Washington and said, we don't like what you're doing. So if you're going to withhold funds from schools because they're disobeying your duly elected laws, the federal government's going to help them usurp the duly elected state laws. So that's now in the new plan now. Like it's formal now, part of the plan. If your local government implements laws that the feds don't like and the schools want to rebel against the local governments and supersede what they're lawfully entitled to do, the federal government's going to help them do that. They're going to step in here and you can see, pay their salaries and do other things in order to implement those COVID safety measures. So that's great. Using the Department of Education's full legal authority to protect students' access to in-person instruction. We're going to talk about that one too. That was the Department of Education stepping in using these civil rights statutes to basically say that any student, because of their disabilities, might be at risk for COVID. And so any anti-masking statutes are now civil rights violations because you have to protect somebody with disabilities, which is a whole separate conversation. We did a whole show on that. Getting students and staff school tested regularly. So testing, providing every resource to the FDA to support timely review of vaccines under the age of 12. So going after the kids, and you've already heard the vaccine hysterics out there talking end after end after end about, well, it's just a school, right? It's part of the schools. And so rather than dealing with a bunch of Luddites, the eggheads who are just so dumb that they don't want to get the vaccine, they'll just die off eventually. You just started early with the schools. You get that subscription program started, from cradle to grave there. Every 6 months, you get a new booster or whatever the subscription model is. We'll see how that goes. So they're also going to be further protecting the vaccinated, which is a weird concept to me because I thought that the vaccine was supposed to essentially provide you protection. Remember that? Remember back when they said, oh, it's just get the vaccine, couple shots, no problem. J&J one shot. Life's going to return back to normal. July 4th comes around. Joe Biden comes out. Hey, it's great. Jill Biden's out there doing cartwheels. It's great to breathe fresh air again. Then a couple months later, we're all back to the same tyrannical nonsense that we knew was coming. It was never going to end, which is why we've been screaming about this for 18 months. So all of the vaccinated people are now being further protected. So a booster is now coming. The subscription plan is well underway. Promises to give Americans their highest level of protection yet. 3-shot vaccines are coming. So when people said, a lot of people are scratching their heads going, booster? What? right? Even a lot of people that I talk to on a regular basis, they're going, what the hell is this booster? They're not plugged in like I am, right? I'm kind of a lunatic plugged into Twitter like it's injected into my spinal cord. And, I'm just sort of plugged into all of these issues because I'm kind of a sick person. But they're not. They listen to Dr. Fauci once every month or so, and they listen to the news, and they said, oh, well, that's all I got to do. Just go get a couple shots. That's it. No problem at all. And they did that. And now this is coming back, and they're going, what? I got to do this how often? Every 6 months now? So they're a little bit skeptical of it. And so what the Biden administration is doing is saying, oh, look, I know you're freaked out about this. Don't worry. These things are common, totally common, like hepatitis, tetanus, all those other things. More durable and very robust protection. Implementation of this plan depends on authorization of the boosters by the FDA, which of course we know they're going to cram that through. CDC's independent advisory committee as well. And as soon as those authorizations are given, they're going to start September 20th. So they've already got a date. They've already got a hard date. 11 days from now, and as long as the authorizations are given, then we're going to start them on September 20th. It's like, hey, that's in 11 days. So do you have them made and distributed or not? So you're expecting full authorization, aren't you? And we know that previously, 2 different senior level vaccine officials from the FDA resigned. I don't think we covered that story here, but they resigned. And many people are speculating that's over these booster shots that a lot of people have questions about. So easy access to booster shots, ensuring Americans know where to get a booster. We saw a lot of that here today. Joe Biden comes out repeatedly. We just have to educate Americans and let them know where to go get a vaccine. You go onto the the whitehouse.gov/COVID plan. You go down where to find a vaccine center. We know it exists, right? Everybody knows the vaccine exists. Everybody knows where to get it. Every time you turn on the TV, there's some politician or some media person, even Republicans out there, just smashing the vaccine in your forehead every which way you turn. I'm so tired of hearing it. There's nothing to talk about anymore. It's just vaccine opinions on the vaccine everywhere you look. And it's not going to be changing anytime soon. It's part of our life now. It's like the TSA of medicine now all across your life everywhere you go. Here is Joe Biden now, the unifying person, the person who's telling us that vaccines work and they help, they help protect you, saying that we also have to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated, which is strange to me, given the fact that the allegation, of course, is that the vaccine protects you. So what the heck do you need protection from the unvaccinated for? Here is Joe Biden.
Disney, Tyson's Food, and even Fox News. The bottom line, we're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers.
What?
We're going to reduce the spread of COVID-19 by increasing the share of the workforce that is vaccinated in businesses all across America. My plan will extend the vaccination requirements that I previously issued in the healthcare field. Already, I've announced, we'll be requiring vaccinations of all nursing home workers who treat patients on Medicare and Medicaid because I have that federal authority. Tonight, I'm using that same authority to expand that to cover those who work in hospitals, home health care facilities.
All right, so we already went through all of that. That's Joe out there saying that the unvaccinated are now direct threats to the vaccinated, and he needs to protect them. And so he's going to do that. He's going to sort of implement all of these insane new requirements nationally, across the board, executive order, that you have to go take something. If you want your job, you have to go take this in America. Land of the free, home of the brave. Really? I don't know. We have increasing testing and requiring masking. It's going to take time for the newly vaccinated to get protection, right? So the new people, so we're still going to have to do the mask thing for a long time because it's going to take time for us to cram the vaccine in everybody's arm. And while we are just sort of, funneling people through the grinder, you got to wear your mask while we're doing that, obviously. Biden's plan takes new actions to increase the amount of testing in your own home, at pharmacies, and all of those other things. Testing always made sense to me. Mobilizing industry to expand easy-to-use production, making at-home tests more affordable. Okay, like all of that's, I think, pretty reasonable, right? Now, he did come out and scolded America, I don't have a clip of this, for being unruly with flight attendants, saying that they're going to be doubling the fines if you're not wearing your mask on the airplane. So good to know. Yeah, you should be nice to your flight attendants, of course. But also, where is he getting his authority to do this? Oh, yeah, here it is. Continuing to require masking for interstate travel. Again, this is from an executive order. This is all interstate stuff, right? So interstate travel, TSA is now going to be extending its orders through January 18th, 2022. So all mask wearing in the airports, all public transportation, all going to be in place. And then the same order that he issued protecting federal workforce, going to make sure those mask mandates are now available on federal property. So at the start of this segment, I was sort of talking about a lot of the things that we saw, or that I was thinking about that we did not see in the speech. We just went through what we saw in the speech, talked about schools and masks and mandates and vaccine mandates and private businesses and nursing homes and all of those things. But we kind of glossed over a lot of pretty important things as it relates to this whole pandemic. I made a list of a couple of them. Didn't hear much in the speech about anything about natural immunity, for example. Didn't see anything about that, right? We've seen a lot of studies come out that have opinions on that and how that might affect your immunity if you had COVID previously. No talking about antibody testing, whether or not there is a mechanism for that, whether you can test for natural immunity. Had no conversation about body mass index or obesity being a major problem here. None of that conversation. And of course, wouldn't expect to see this, but no information about any other treatments, right? We've got some pretty no words there in that broad category. But didn't hear any of those other words. Other treatments, the I word, the H word, all of those different things. I didn't hear anything like that, but that would be a part of the universe of things that you might hear from. Also, something I've been very critical about from day one, no conversation whatsoever about general health. No conversation, didn't mention exercise, didn't say go walk around the block, do some jumping jacks in your living room, do 5 push-ups before you sit down to eat. No conversation about nutrition. Just jab, 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 jab. Shove these chemicals in your body. Don't worry about that Big Mac you're shoving down your gullet. Just keep doing that. Sit at home. Don't get any exercise and just keep putting lard in your mouth. No conversation about abstinence or drugs, right? Abstinence from alcohol. A lot of people, we've seen alcohol sales were going through the roof back in the early days of the pandemic. I'm not sure if they are. I can tell you, as a criminal defense attorney, we've seen aberrations in the types of criminal charges coming through, undoubtedly, right? A lot more domestic violence calls, for example. People locked up at home, having arguments, neighbors calling the cops on them. So a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs involved, a lot of mental health crises that are out there. No conversations whatsoever about nature, getting outside, getting some sun, vitamin D, doing something good for yourself. No conversations whatsoever about mindfulness or stress. Now that you are somebody who is theoretically going to get fired from your job because you're not willing to go inject yourself with whatever Joe Biden wants you to inject in your body. And it's not even about this specific vaccine or that specific issue. It's about the concept in general, right? A lot of people don't have any particular problem with this particular vaccine. It's the mechanism. It's what we're seeing. It's the idea that the federal government can come down here and just order your entire life to be compliant with whatever they deem to be the truth. It's troubling. No conversation about that, right? 80 million people theoretically are going to be impacted by this. Are they opening up suicide hotlines? Are they opening up mental health clinics? Are they talking to people about how to handle this stress and this major life change? No, they're not even a conversation about it. Also, didn't hear anything about exemptions. I would love to know, is the White House going to be complying with this? Is every single individual inside the White House going to be mandated to get it? How about the CDC? We saw that there were no mandates for them previously. How about the U.S. Postal Service? Are they going to get it? I saw a headline that the USPS, a major union here in the United States, that they are not going to be required to be within this executive order. Why not, Joe Biden? Why not? They're more than 100 people, aren't they? Yes. So why do they get an exemption? We'll see if that comes to fruition, but we'll keep a close eye on that. Who gets written out of the rules? Why? If people get exemptions from that, why is that? Interesting. Religious exemptions, this implicates some constitutional issues we'll talk about next, but religious exemptions, medical exemptions, no holdouts. I read through the entire plan on whitehouse.gov, nothing in there. No natural immunity exemptions either, right? If you're thinking about a comprehensive plan, if you're thinking about encouraging people to be healthy and save lives and actually impact the pandemic, wouldn't that be a good option? Just, hey, listen, I know you really don't want to get it. Let's just make sure. I know you say that you thought you already had it. Let's just do this. You didn't have it. Okay. You didn't have it. So, now that we're sitting here having a conversation, I'm noticing you're 30 pounds overweight. Doesn't look like you've exercised in the last 2 years. people in that category might be higher risk. And so I have a vaccine right here. I'd love to talk to you about it. Can we talk about it? And you go, yeah, maybe I should, and you reevaluate your conversation with an actual medical professional, somebody who's looking at your health, your well-being, weighing your risk factors, and then giving you an educated opinion on that. Not some demented old man up there that nobody even knows if he's in charge of the government at this point anymore, who's just telling you, you have to do it. Not even a conversation about anything about your wellness or about your risk factors, nothing. The president is now ordering it, and it's going to come through your employer, who's also going to have their hands tied. Sick. We have any work from home accommodations. Are we going to see anybody who is allowed to work from home and they've got over 100 employees? Can they be allowed to continue to work from home? Do they have to go get vaccinated if they're not actually interfacing with people? Yeah, probably, right? Because it's now the government is telling you to do it. We also have some serious constitutional implications here. These are the most obvious ones. There's about 50 other of them, of course. Religious freedoms, if you have a religious objection to that, pretty well codified in that First Amendment. The right to privacy, also pretty well codified. All the abortioners are going to be screaming about this. It's my body, my choice, my body, my rights. Don't tell me what to do with my body. But this is an entirely different conversation, right? That there is a right to privacy that has been recognized by the courts. How about equal protection? We're sort of creating an underclass of U.S. citizens called the unvaxxed. It's like a group of dregs of society. It's all the troglodytes, the Luddites, the morons out there who just don't believe the government. They're free thinkers or something like that. They don't listen to authority, and that makes them dangerous. And so now we're going to penalize them. We're actually going to literally, the federal government is going to create a subclass of people. Joe Biden just did that today. National mandate. And if you don't participate in that, you don't get federal contracts. You don't get to participate in even a job with a private business because the government has mandated that you do something that they want you to do. How is that person protected? We talk about equal protection under the law. No two people are treated differently. It's kind of a fundamental principle in our justice system. Now they're just saying, well, only equal protection for the vaccinated people. Everybody else, sorry, maybe you shouldn't be so dumb and just go get the jab. Also, due process, of course. A lot of issues with due process violations. What about somebody who already has an existing contract with the U.S. government? You have 1,000 employees. You have a contract with them that's in place right now, and you have some expectation of continued relationships. You're going to execute on your end of the bargain. The government just came out and they just changed the deal. They just altered the deal. Pray they don't alter it any further. Now you have to go tell your employees, if you want to maintain this contract, the terms have changed. This is what happened. Executive order, and now you have to comply. So what do you do then? You sort of had a right that was promised to you by the government, guaranteed, enshrined in a formal contract. The government just changed that without your knowledge, without your acquiescence to it, and now you're going to be denied those same benefits. Because Joe Biden just, without any due process, just changed the deal, altered the deal. We also have a lot of problems here with enforcement and compliance. So what happens now? Joe Biden, we know we have the TSA to enforce masks in the airports. Who's going to enforce all of this in different businesses? Who's going to go through all of the 100 plus businesses throughout America and make sure that they're in compliance? And if they're not in compliance, what are the penalties for that? We have the IRS that checks everybody's financials. Are they going to open up a COVID division to also check their HR protocols to make sure that they have COVID vaccine policies in place? Are we going to have a new COVID revenue service or a COVID Justice Department out there to go make sure that everybody is complying with all of these mandates? And is this going to be a new enforcement entity? And if so, what is it going to cost? How long is it going to be around here? Are we going to be seeing this thing indefinitely? Yeah, probably. Here to stay. This is the current administration. We got another 3.5 years of this, folks. Let's see what you have to say about this. We're jumping on into the questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got our first one in the house. Got a lot of questions here. First one from Spawn Dog says, will his plan be a failure like everything else he touches? I've been getting numerous calls about a booster shot due to the fact that I have ulcerative colitis. All of my health care comes from the VA. Since I can't afford health insurance, the VA gave me my first 2 doses. As I weighed the option with my doctor, the message was left on my voicemail to get the booster. I didn't answer, spam calls and not recognizing the number and all of that. Well, probably might have been spam because I don't think that comes out until September 20th, but thanks for chiming in there, Spawn Dog. Good to see you. The Anticus Prime says, I know someone that worked for an electronics company in QA that designed electronic components for military equipment, including vital equipment for things like fighter jets. What the company would do is build a component that is rock solid, can take just about anything you can dish at it. After getting the DoD contract, they would start using really cheap materials. The person in quality assurance would be, quote, inspired to let things slide so that they could be another sale, and kept getting pressure because they wouldn't. This is my problem with blanket acceptance of anything, any medical treatment, any vaccine. I'll leave it there. People will blindly accept these things, though. The Milgram is strong with these people. That was the other experiment you were thinking about the other day. Yeah, the Milgram experiment, the Stanford experiment. Thank you, Vanticus. We have Avalon says, are mandates laws? How does the WHO, NIH, CDC get to tell us what we can and can't do? I spoke to a lawyer, said that the mandate is unconstitutional, but a private company can get away with it. This will fly like a lead brick. Yeah, I mean, the problem with a lot of these mandates is they are discretionary, right? I mean, it really is not the federal government that is mandating that you get it. If you don't want to get it, you can go work somewhere else, right? So it's sort of, that's their escape hatch here. Now, practically what we know is that it's extremely coercive. People are under duress. They make these situations not because they want to, but because they want to keep putting food on the table for their families. And so the courts, at least the politicians at this point, until the courts can get involved, they're all rolling over for this stuff, right? Almost every single governor in this entire country rolled over when the precedent for all of this stuff was set back last year in 2020. They all just said, oh, I guess it's scary and dangerous, and I guess we better do this. And now the precedent has been set. The foundation has been set, and they're acting on it. We have another one from Kincaid says, good evening, Rob. This is related to yesterday's comment. I did not articulate myself well. The topic was privacy. Okay, so let me read that. Okay, this is a long question, Kincaid, and I don't think that's on topic at the moment. So we'll get to that one at a later date. So let me just save that one, because we got a ton of questions here, and I want to make sure we get this to the stuff that's on topic. We've got Joe Biden, and I don't mean that to be, thank you for the comment. We'll save it. Joe Biden says, Joe Biden hate, okay, can't read that one. We have another one here from Schnookum says, do you think that this is the push for controls in anticipation of riding the coattails of recently predicted upcoming drop in Delta to be able to falsely claim that his plan was the cause? I see what you're saying. So, in other words, Joe Biden's going to come out, watch the Delta variant case results go down dramatically, and then claim victory. Yeah, maybe, probably, right? He'll probably do that. But they're probably going to be very skeptical about claiming victory for anything now, because there's always going to be additional variants that come out. We have NY Renal MD says, forced vaccination and treatments will fail. It is obviously having the opposite effect. People should decide on the vaccine with their doctor, not Jimmy Kimmel, Andrew Cuomo, or Joe Biden. Shaming is wrong. Let people come to vaccination because it is good treatment for them. Yeah, so that's from the Good Doctor. Yeah, forced vaccination and treatments will fail. That's from a doctor. The doctor's in the house. Says, let's see here, Florida woman. Rob, did you notice how many times Biden said, let me be clear? This is Obama talk. For 8 years, Obama said this. Obama supporters use this phrase. He said it at least 10 times. It's a pet peeve of mine, that stupid phrase. Let me be clear, right? It's really sloppy, lazy language. Lawyers do it all the time. We're going to see that in the next segment. Even the Department of Justice does it. We're going to see that in Merrick Garland's new lawsuit against Texas in the next segment. They talk like that. Well, it's clearly unconstitutional. No, it's not. That's not a sentence. That's not an argument. Right? Texas's law is clearly unconstitutional. That's not an argument. That's an observation you might make, but what's your argument there? But they use that a lot, and it is annoying. I think it's just filler words, right? It doesn't mean anything. It sounds like you're tough, but it doesn't mean anything. We have another one that says, that was a question about the vaccines and whether they're experimental or not. I don't know. Robert Barnes is doing good stuff on that over at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We have Pinky2 says, if our state, mine is Oklahoma, has a law against mandates, do we have to get the vax with be mandating it? So, look, talk to your local attorneys about that, right? Talk to anybody who's in your local state. I'm not licensed to practice law in Oklahoma. And I would even tell you to get a lawyer in Arizona if you have a real serious legal question about that. And so the general answer, not yours specifically, Pinky, is that the federal government is going to make these decisions. And if the individual companies make that decision, you have to make a decision at that point in time, right? You might say, I think this is unconstitutional. You got to go hire a lawyer, file a claim, and duke it out in court. Most people are just not willing to do that. And the consequence would be you lodge an objection with your employer, and your employer says, listen, I don't know what to do about this, okay? The federal government is telling me I have to comply. The Biden administration, the executive branch, you might think he is a demented old, nutcase for whatever you want to think about the man, but he is now somebody who is the most powerful person in the world through the executive branch, the federal government, now mandating a small business, you have to do what I tell you to do. And sorry, I agree with you maybe that this is a terrible situation, but I can't do anything. And if you're not going to get jabbed, I have to let you go. Sorry. The federal government told me I had to do that. I can't help it. So all of the legal arguments doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter, practically speaking. It matters legally, right? By the time this gets all sorted out in court, 6 months from now, next term, when the Supreme Court comes down here and says, yeah, you're kind of treated these unvaxxed people who are U.S. citizens like bags of meat. That's inappropriate. That's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. And they correct this. Who cares? That's 18 months from now. How many people have been let go as a result of that? How many people are facing serious consequences because Joe Biden issued an order today and is now going to be implementing this? By the time the courts catch up, the damage is already done. They know that. They don't care what the courts do here. They don't care. The courts say that you're not allowed to continue to extend the eviction moratorium. They did it anyways. So that's the game they're playing. They know that if the courts come back down here and smack Joe Biden across the mouth on this, it's going to take 20 months before anything gets done. And meanwhile, they're going to be able to cause a lot of catastrophe and wreckage in the process. Let's see what else we've got. That was from Pinky. We have Robute says, well, Joe Biden, if you want me to get vaccinated, then have a 3-year clinical trial for any long-term effects. Stop politicizing the FDA to approve the vaccine. Stop gaslighting, censoring any opposing views. I like vaccines for diseases that have decades of research. And people should see a doctor before they make any of those decisions. I agree. Pepperidge Farms is here. Says, anyone remember when they called Trump a dictator for a fraction of what Biden has done? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Isn't that beautiful? It's a good meme. We have another one from It's Ed. Says, haha, someone should tell Biden where my patience will be if someone tries to force me to get jabbed. Here's a hint. My patience is at the end of a force multiplier. Peaceful force multipliers. Things that are very persuasive verbal multipliers. Jeremy Matrita says, who the hell does he think he is? That certainly did not sound like Joe Biden speaking. If his teleprompter didn't say those words, he would have prefaced that statement with I'm probably going to get in trouble by my staff. But yeah, that friendly old man Joe persona certainly wasn't out there today. Pepperidge, let's see, already got that one. We have another one from Kenny. Kenny 1B says, vaccination mandates is how the Biden administration purges, quote, white supremacy from the federal government. According to left-wing ideology, white supremacists are the ones not getting vaccinated. In reality, the mandate will increase the proportionality of white liberals in the government since Hispanic and black communities are the most resistant to getting the jab. The Biden administration was unable to purge the white supremacists because they didn't actually exist in the government or the military. Yeah, going to be some pretty serious unintended consequences there, I think, from this catastrophic error, right? People who are staunchly anti-vaxxers, they're not going to just sit around and go, oh, I guess, right? There's going to be a big portion of them that will. A big portion of people will just say, all right, fine. Look, I held out as long as I could. I need this job, whatever. And they're just going to go get it. But there's going to be a contingent here, right? And what if it's 5% of people or 10% of people who are in the current workforce, who are in the federal government workforce, 10% gone? Huge problem. There's already massive unemployment. There's already major disruptions in the labor markets. It's not good. That's all I can say. Let's see what else. We have this one from It's Ed says, 100 employees. Well, looks like Karen's going to get canned. Now I only have 99. Don't worry, Rob. Karen had it coming. That's another good point. I didn't think about that, It's Ed. Yeah, suddenly your 110 employee company goes down to a 95 company employee pretty quickly. Jay He says, I'm a bone cancer survivor, considered high risk due to heart issues from the chemo I received. I will never take the vaccine because of this. I'm tired of the constant bullying from the president houseplant to get the jab. I don't care what he implements. He can never take away my constitutional right to choose what I put in my body. So there you go, right? There's an example of somebody who's got strong equivocation there. Zero equivocation about the decision. And I think that Jay Heath probably knows where to get a vaccine. I think he's probably been made aware of that. He knows how to get on Google and find a location. It's not about that, right? Don't need continued educational pushes from Sleepy Joe. We have Hunter Biden is here, says, hey, Dad, don't need to distract people about Afghanistan with the COVID speech. Come on, man, just retire and snort crack off of hookers with me. Hunter's here. We have Nadarb, who is a free human, says, if there is one thing we learned from the Democratic Party during the Trump years is that states don't take orders from the feds. Doesn't have the authority to enforce any of this stuff he's slurring on about. Get out of here and go eat your pudding, you old kook. That was from Nadarb, the free human. We have Want to Know says, if a bunch of people that were flown and bussed all over the USA that were infected with COVID and housed all together, could there be a reason for the rise in the numbers? Or is the unvaccinated that have had COVID and have antibodies? Maybe it's the unvaccinated kids. Yeah, a lot of potential buckets of malfeasance. Joe Biden just lumps them all into one bucket. It's all the unvaccinated people. They're all the worst thing that's ever happened to America. Monster One says, all jokes aside, F this dude. It's time for peace. I agree. It's time for peaceful civil disobedience. People need to put their foot down and hit the streets. As Mad Maxine said, it's time to tell this administration they are not welcome. I think you're onto something there, Monster One. This is a hard line in the sand, right? This is where things start to change pretty dramatically. I saw a lot of activity from a lot of people on Twitter this afternoon, fired up about this, right? And so we'll see what happens. Now, again, they're going against the tide, right? The tide is the federal government is like a steamroller rolling over this stuff. The Republicans are asleep at the wheel. I don't know if there is even a Republican Party. Did anybody offer a contrast to Joe Biden today? Not that I saw. They're all just twiddling their thumbs, letting the administration do whatever they want to do. This is further proof from somebody says we need a convention of the states to rein in the regulations that the executive department is imposing. I agree. Thunder 7 says lawsuits are already swirling around mandated vaccines, and now more lawsuits taking place as a majority of unions are against Biden's mandated vax. Demanding people get jabbed by painting them as killing granny hasn't worked and won't work. People have the legal right to make their own medical decisions. And the Delta variant is so yesterday. Flip-flop Fauci is already talking about the Mu variant as the most dangerous variant known to humankind. We're being so played when the faulty PCR test can't even distinguish one variant from another. That's from Thunder 7. Yeah, it's perpetual. A lot of vaccine salesmen out there. They've got a lot of vaccines to sell, and the grift is way too good. They have an entire population of captive sheep that just go wherever the wolves tell them to go. No, booster shot time. Better go get that again. So we're going to see a lot more of it. We have John Halgren says directly from the CDC. CDC recommends that anyone with signs or symptoms get tested regardless of vaccination status or prior infection. So where do they get this weekly testing for the unvaccinated from? It's punitive. It needs to be fought. That's from John Halgren. Good to see you, John. Not Josh. We have No Doubt says, as of a few days ago, between 88 and 93% of people above the age of 12 have immunity from at least one shot or COVID. He's chasing a golden unicorn and torturing 7 to 12% of the population for no value. The news typically reports percentages that includes kids under 12, thus making it sound much lower. While not easy to pull this together, all the information is on usfacts.org and CDC COVID data tracker home. Cool, so we'll take a look at that. That's from No Doubt. Yeah, and they're not even talking about that, right? No conversations whatsoever about natural immunity or people who have previously, already had it, that have continual antibodies that make them less susceptible to COVID. It's not even discussed. Yeah, it is providing value though, right? No doubt. They're chasing a golden unicorn. The value there is not in a reduction in COVID. They're not trying to solve the COVID pandemic. Like that's nonsense. They're using it as a political tool to further their agenda. I think it's pretty obvious at this point. Let's see. We have another one. Dead Mouse says you can't arrest a virus. The only thing that can wipe out the Delta variant is the next variant, which is already coming around the corner. It's Mu. We have, let's see, NY Renal MD says, if this stands, Robert, then any so-called treatment can be forced. This is practicing medicine without a license. Yeah. Prescribing medical treatment should be restricted to those with knowledge, training, and a license to do so. We need to take back the House and impeach him ASAP. Well, they will. It's going to be a bloodbath next election. Let's see what else we've got. A peaceful bloodbath. We have another one from Avalon says 100 plus employees at the local level or corporate down. Our local Dollar General has like 8 people working there. Will they have to? Yeah, it's a giant corporation with thousands of stores. They're all a part of it. We have Want to Know says, Rob, do you think Biden and others have stock in the vaccine companies? Biden did not like it when they had Trump's name on it. Biden claimed it because he's got no ones that I know of. So, I don't know specifically, right? I can't talk about that, but I can't talk about it because I don't know. If I knew, I would talk about it, but I don't. And I would guess that they are probably, invested in multiple different funds and conglomerates that have stock in the pharmaceutical business because it's a huge sector of the economy. So I would imagine that they have some money and some investments in there, no doubt. Uncle Sam says, hold the line, people. This man has dementia, for crying out loud. You wouldn't trust his directions to Walmart. Why do you trust him here? Yeah, well, we have another one from TOS Forever says, I see Nick Recadas in the house. We'll get to him in a minute. Says, it might be an idea that the government contract business stop working for the feds. If the people want their services, they will get not only employees and work. Yes. So I think that's sort of part of the analysis that people are going to have to be making in their lives. Do they want their business that is continuing to be funded by the federal government? Do they want that more than they don't want to get the vaccine? There's a balance there. And if one gives out, well, they're just going to go get the jab, I'd guess. We have It's Ed says, honestly, Rob, using owner-operators is the only way to make a profit in trucking now. I can't afford to have my own trucks anymore. It's insane how expensive it is. I have to limit the amount of employees I have as well. This isn't going to help. This is only going to make people find other ways to circumvent the system, like contracting work to people. I know companies that do that all the time. They hire people as 1099s and let them work from home. Saves a lot of money on taxes. Yeah, that's true, right? And people are now all working from home anyways, and technology is really becoming useful in remote work environments. And so the other solution, guess what, is people outsource. People go across their physical borders, because many Americans are getting paid by their government not to work. I know a lot of that ran out recently, but there are jobs that need to be filled. And if people don't want to come into work and they don't want to participate in a productive lifestyle because the U.S. government is going to subsidize them not doing that, well, business entrepreneurs are going to go elsewhere. They're going to find other things and other ways around this. 1099 contractors is a good solution for that. Thanks, It's Ed. We have Pepperidge Farm says, anyone remember when they called Trump decisive? Pepperidge Farms remembers. Pepperidge Farms is here. Schnookum says, who will be the first in court to charge Biden for breaking the international treaty that is the Nuremberg Code, since only the EUA treatments are available? I don't know, Schnookums, but I would guess nobody. I think that they're all happy that he's the Build Back Better guy, right? They're all on that team. Billy Gates is here, says, my puppet did a good job today dictating mandated vaccines. It's good to have control over the people. Wuhan Lab already creating a new pandemic for 2022. I'm getting a brand new spanking experimental jabs ready, making billions and billions and billions. Bill Gates is just making it rain over there with COVID. Sergeant Bob says, where is his backup Kamala? Still a missing person, per the milk cartons. I saw her on Twitter today. She was talking simultaneously. While Joe Biden was out there mandating that all Americans inject themselves, Kamala was out there talking about the right to privacy, my body, my choice stuff, attacking the Texas law. So they're playing both sides of the bodily autonomy debate simultaneously. It's very clever. Miss Danny says, how are you today, Robert? I'm good, Miss Danny. How are you? Just watching Biden in that video gave me chills. Is he getting a contagious virus called the CCP? LOL. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be America as it used to be within all the freedom he used to have. Best from Uruguay. Yeah, you're 100% right about that, right? I think, Miss Danny, think you're onto something. A lot of us are remembering 2 years ago an entirely different country. Arnie B5 says, this sounds like step one from a very popular book that describes a future time when, quote, it forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. Just saying, right? It's your new Vax Pass. It's now how you enter the American economy. Scary. I'm sad to say this. This is the beginning of an end of a great nation and an American experiment, says an anonymous. I work for a nuclear weapons laboratory that is responsible for the safety and security of the United States nuclear arsenal. There will be a mass exodus of employees as a result of these mandates, leaving our nuclear deterrent vulnerable to atrophy, or worse, lack of qualified people solving immediate safety and security issues as they arise. That's from an anonymous over on Locals. Thanks for sharing that. United States nuclear arsenal weapons laboratory technician here on the show saying, yeah, a lot of people there are not going to want to comply with this. And I think you're going to see that across many industries. We even saw it from the Los Angeles Fire Department. Played that on the show. Monster One says, has this clown ever considered that those 80 million people who already had the virus, studies have shown that getting the coof is 13 times more effective than getting the shot. Why the F do I need the shot? I already had COVID. Can you explain yourself, Joe? He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to answer any questions. He just turns and runs, and the rest of his minions implement the orders, and the rest of our weak, spineless politicians just fall in line and allow it to unfold. DG McBride says the USA now has hygiene laws like Germany did during the 1930s, substitute unvaccinated for Jew, and you can see where this is headed. Yeah, it's really, really, really scary stuff. That's not good. And the way that they're talking about it, it's really dehumanizing, right? Talked about that. Jimmy Kimmel saying, what do you call him? Wheezy? He said, how about if the hospitals are full, we just don't take the unvaccinated people. And he said, we just throw them in the gutter and just say, enjoy the rest of your life there, Wheezy. Something like that. You're on national TV to, thousands of people, presumably. Talking about your fellow American like somebody you just roll off the side of a cliff because they didn't do what you wanted them to do. Do you know what their personal stories are? Did you hear from the guy that we just talked to earlier on this show that has ulcerative colitis, that is a veteran that had, all of these extenuating circumstances? You want to just throw him in the gutter too, Jimmy Kimmel? What an insane country now. And it's not like a joke, right? This is actually a thing. We have some other ones. Be Brave says it's medical rape. Yeah, I mean, you're under coercion, under duress in order to do this. Kincaid says, you and others have made great points related to the readiness. I mean, there are existing drugs that work. All that would need would be an infrastructure upgrade to medical. It's obvious that citizen care is not the focus. Biden is so fake, it's sickening. I love words, but give a back alley and a gorilla mask for handsy charades, no Cuomo. That's from Kincaid. I think she's talking about Larry Elder, who had a egg thrown at him from some person in a gorilla mask. Yeah. We have another question here from Benjamin Netanyahu. Says, brah, here in Israel, even after 80% was vaccinated, the ICU and death rates remain the same. This has and always will be a disease of the 4 or more comorbidities, which of course Joe Biden didn't talk about at all. We have another one from Sergeant Bob. Says, can someone please hack into Sleepy Joe's teleprompter and stop this? His speeches are getting like a Kamala cackle. Really tough. I know that chairman of the board was over on Locals, and we were rallying him to finish the speech. He's like, all right, I'm on point number 2. We're like, keep going, because he's going to whisper at the end. Just keep going. Hopefully he made it. Hopefully he's still with us over there. I know sometimes those speeches can have an effect. Angel22 says, if you've had COVID and got the monoclonal antibody treatment, you have to wait at least 3 months before you can be vaxxed. So now what? Further, my husband is still allergic and no mandate or FDA approval will fix that. Would Biden rather him risk death so he can keep his job? Yes, he would. Yeah, he doesn't care. He wants that jab in his arm. He didn't say go talk to a doctor. Just said, that's it. We have D. Rodriguez, a Florida woman, says, I work from home, have an exemption from the vaccine. I drive into my office to get tested once a week. That's amazing. So even if you work from home, you have to go into your office to go get tested to make sure that you're safe to work from home. It's about punishing the people who are not complying. That's all it is. Screw Nazis says, hey, remember, guys, all the people who are for COVID mandates are Nazis and should be called as such. However, no violence. Note that they are for COVID concentration camps and medical apartheid. They are disgusting fascists and they should be shown as such. Yeah, we call them out on this channel. Trader Joe says, Rob, when do we roll out the charges of treason? Yeah, I don't know when that happens. Britt Reed is here, says, it's nights like this and your vaccine segment and why I love and financially support your show. Thank you for continuing to sound the alarm. That's from Britt Reed. Thank you, Britt Reed. That's a very nice comment. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate you being a part of the show. It's a live stream and it's better when we do it together, as we like to say. We have chairman of the board. Speaking of the devil, he's alive. He made it through the speech. Says, my unvaxxed daughter, 14, just had to quarantine from school because her friend tested positive after feeling sick. Her friend is fully vaxxed and at home sick. My daughter has had 2 negative tests since then, but has to get to the school every day, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 weeks to be rapid tested before school because she was exposed to the vaxxed kid. None of this makes any sense. They are preaching that we must protect the vaxxed from the unvaxxed. Huh? What is happening? That's from chairman of the board. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just insanity. I think it's mass delusion at this point. John Delar says, it seems like everyone in Washington has caught COVID but Biden. Very suspicious. Are we sure the president is not a hologram or a robot? There's somebody on Twitter who follows me very regularly. I think his name is John Q. Kennedy, if you want to give him a follow. It's very interesting hypotheses there from John Q. Kennedy. The Q's in there for a reason, but basically supporting that allegation that Joe Biden is basically a deepfake and the whole thing is just a charade. and I love it. I just think it's hysterical. Greg Marat says, hey, Rob, have you heard of the parasite stress theory? From what I understood, it says that due to the parasite prevention measures of human biology, it alters the physiological and social behaviors of humans. An increase in disgust sensitivity has been linked to an increase of levels in xenophobia. We could be seeing this happening in real time, where disgust mechanisms of the vaccinated are getting irrationally triggered against the unvaccinated. That's from Greg Marat. No, I've not heard about that, but I've sort of been poking around in those areas of the conversation, thinking that there's something sort of more spiritual going on here, right? There's a disconnect, yes, on the surface. It's all the pandemic, it's all the virus stuff. But you start to watch a lot of these government bureaucrats, and now you start to say, there's something else, there's something else deeper there. And I think it is a kind of a spiritual thing. I think it's certainly a power, a lot of the normal human motivations that you think about, like money and power, all of that is true. But there's something more fundamental going on here. And so I think that what you're talking about, I've thought about it in those terms. I've thought about it in the term of a mass delusion, right? And sort of analogize that to, the Salem witch trials or the Afghanistan war. We're all kind of deluded into that for 20 years, right? We have the government that creates these realities for us. And we have to be asking ourselves if we are the person in Plato's story in the cave, watching the shadows on the wall, just thinking that, oh, that's our reality. We don't realize that we're being shackled into this cave. And when we walk out of the cave, we finally see the light and see reality for what it is. So, I think that a lot of these people, I've had conversations with them, are in this category of people that are self-perpetuating their division, their animosity towards people who are not like them. And the media is perpetuating that. Joe Biden is now perpetuating that. He's legitimizing that claim. The idea that certain people in this country are more valuable than other people, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. All right, a lot of questions here before we jump into the next segment. A couple more, and then we've got some super chats. A lot of stuff here. Says, we got NY Renal MD says, DeSantis was having a lot of success with the monoclonals antibodies. This is a treatment that works right now. Vaccines take time. I'm worried dumb Sleepy Joe will dissuade people from taking advantage of this, the treatment that Trump and Joe Rogan had. The good doctor, he did actually mention that in his speech. That was one thing he did mention. He did say that they're working on that and they're going to be trying to implement more of that. The Nuremberg principle says, the people saying you take the vaccine for the greater good are disgusting. The greater good logic was used to justify horrible medical experiments to the Jews that did not end well. Also, remember when the CDC deliberately and deceptively infected blacks with syphilis in Tuskegee? When people believe they're doing it for the greater good, it will result in horrible excesses. That's from Nuremberg principle over at Locals. Couple more. Dwight Schrute is here, says, if the lab theory is true, is this a government-created killer nanobot robot infection? I don't know if that's a fact or not, but Farmer's Daughter says, hey, Robert, my question is, has the administration really been vaccinated? Anything could have been in those shots. Not an accusation, just wondering. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Jack Elias says, no. These demo fascists tell us that this is the best economy ever. There are no people unemployed that don't want to be unemployed, just like there are no people left in Afghanistan that don't want to be executed. Yeah, just like you can, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you want to leave Afghanistan, you can leave Afghanistan. Got it. Pinky2 says, I misstated my question. I'm disabled. I don't work. I missed the info today that B is mandating the jab nationally, so I know you're not in Oklahoma, but I don't work. And is this new law be made for employees or for all Americans? So it's for employees, right? He doesn't have the ability to go down in there and tell you, Pinky2, you have to go do that, but he's twisting the vice grip, tightening it up so that private businesses now have leverage over their employees to mandate them to go do that. We have a couple more here. Mustang Jeff says, hope in 2022 is a mostly peaceful bloodbath in November 2022. Mostly peaceful. Yeah, entirely peaceful politically, but a political bloodbath. The Taliban is here, says, is this the freedom that Americans are always talking about. That's from the Taliban. Sergeant Bob says, Dummy Kimmel also does not like the Second Amendment. What does he know? Not much. I think he's just playing to the audience. We have another one from Geomancy Game says, Hey, Robert, been listening to you for a long time, but I'm never really here when you're live. I'm a single father who has been battling cancer since last year, and without the help of my family, I'd probably be dead. Figure I would throw a few bucks your way in hopes that it will also help increase my exposure on YouTube. I listen to your streams at night, and because of the damage the chemo has done, I will be unable to work for the rest of my life probably. I haven't been able to be approved or denied for disability, so I've been doing YouTube to supplement my income. Thank you so much for everything you do. I hope I can be a voice to people to turn to someday. That's from Geomancy Games, my friends. See that right there? So you can give them a search, and we'll see what that brings up here. Looks like they're on Twitter, over on YouTube. Pull this up here, and let's see what we've got over here. Send some love. Is this... Yeah, Geomancy Games. Looks like we got some gaming going on here. Take a look over here, folks. Might be a good channel to subscribe to. Geomancy Games over here. Hit that subscribe button. We'll go ahead and do that myself. And show some support to Geomancy Games. Thanks for chiming in here, Geomancy. Appreciate it. Good luck in your treatment. You know, I've got a story to share with you at some point about my family as well. So we'll talk soon. Best of luck. We have another one from Osok says, Rob, what happened to herd immunity? Nobody cares about that anymore, Osok. We have Monster One says, in response to the disabled woman, I wouldn't be surprised if they mandate it for Social Security disability payments. That's another thing too, yeah. That if you want those federal handouts, not handouts, right? You earn that stuff. You paid into that. It's not a handout. You earn that money. You're finally getting some of your money back, and the government's going to attach strings to it. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. A lot of super chats that came in today. I want to make sure that we get to them, so let's go through them. I appreciate them. This is a spicy segment, no question about it. Let's see what came in. We have Angela B. started the show. No, Beth Cotting. Oh, no, we had K-Bean started off the super chats, and we sort of answered that, saying Postal Service. I saw a tweet that Jen Psaki said that they were going to be excluded. But again, we don't really know if the U.S. Postal Service will be excluded. But I have questions about all of the exclusions. Is the CDC included, or where is it going? Beth Coddington says, Robert, I feel like I should pay you for having to listen to me sing. Beth Coddington sent me a message today, which I think has a happy birthday song in it, but I have not opened it yet because I was skidding from meeting to meeting to meeting today. And so I'm looking forward to that. We have Angela. Thank you, Beth. We have Angela says, my governor here in South Carolina just said, quote, we will fight them to the gates of hell, regarding Biden's speech, which is great. I think Arizona Governor Doug Ducey said something very similar to that. And so you're going to see that, right? You're going to see a lot of states rally around each other to talk about this. And Joe Biden's very happy about that, because you know what that means? We're not talking about Afghanistan. We have Brody Z says, to build back better, you have to destroy everything, disarm, censor, make choices for all of the citizens. Eh, comrade? That's from Brody Z. Yeah, it's the concept that, you know, we've talked about that here on the show also. The idea that there are accelerationists out there that want to see the sort of dismantling of a lot of our institutions, and a lot of these are for that purpose, right? The idea that Joe Biden and, you know, the Democrats want to go out there and unify America, and they're going to implement all of these things in order to build a better country is not really accurate, right? It's to build a different country, one that is better suited to their political agenda. We have another one from VP says, did you know Biden said his God bless you and not God bless America at the end of his speech? I did not see that. I was too busy watching him run out of the room without answering any questions. Celia Frostburn says, can what Biden is doing even be considered legal or fair? Not that I will comply regardless, but he's still going to fawn on this one. God help us. So I don't think it's fair. I personally don't think it's legal, right? I think that what he's doing is stepping over many constitutional bounds. I don't think he has any authority to do that, but he's doing it. And that's the point, right? A lot of people are going to throw their hands up in the air and say, is this constitutional? We're going to file lawsuits and all this stuff. And you go, okay, that's fine. By the time the Supreme Court does anything about it, it's a year later. And all of these things have already been implemented because we have nobody with any spine standing up to combat him on any of this. The Republicans are asleep at the wheel. Absolutely useless. So Joe Biden can essentially, do what he wants. Kathy Bowman says, retired my own home, not taking the vax. Bite me, Biden, not employed, has no leverage over Kathy Bowman. That's good news. Celia Frostburn is here, says, and what about those who got the shot and died or took up hospital beds due to the side effect? Well, right? I guess they're on their own. Biden doesn't care about them. He's not responsible for it. His job is to go out there and sell the vaccine, and he did that. We have Blake Murphy says Biden's speech upsets a lot of people. Now we know why Pelosi is putting a fence back up around the Capitol. Also, a diversion from Afghanistan. Yeah, I made that comment a couple super chats ago, saying that Joe Biden is extremely happy that we're not talking about Afghanistan anymore. We have Jessica Cora says the 7-day rolling average for COVID-19 is 1537 in a country of 360 million people. I don't understand why this is still even an emergency, because they've got a lot more stuff that they need to change in America. And this is the perfect mechanism in order to do that. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. Got a little bit of a head cold today. If you're catching me sniffling, that's what's going on. We have Nikki says, the only way Biden can enforce his plan is if people comply and DOB on each other. Don't become like my country with people who are breaking their own constitution. We're already there, Nikki. Thank you for the forewarning, but we're already right in the middle of it. We have another one from Mercada says, you got monetized. We need to do more shows. #Liberty. I'd love to do that, Nick. I've been listening to you a lot, actually. You know, I'm not sure if you're still in the audience there, but I've been listening to you a lot. Love the work you're doing. I think that it's time to do a lot more of those. I'm a little bit better situated now. I set up a separate camera and my schedule is working itself out. So we'll get over there. Nick says, why is he ignoring me? What is this locals thing? Nick is over on locals too, I think. I'm not sure if you're still promoting that, but Nick is over there. Nick is over at Ricada Law. He's on YouTube. Has a great show. And we did some interviews a while back, but a lot has elapsed back then. That was back during the Derek Chauvin days. Whole country has changed pretty dramatically since then, Nick. Thank you for your support. And I will reach out to you on Twitter and we'll get something set up. We have Look2G says, our friends from South America come here to the USA when things get crazy. Where do we go when our government becomes authoritarian? Canada doesn't seem like an option. So Canada's not really a good option. I've been actually looking into this, not because I want to leave the United States, but because I sort of suspect that we're going to be seeing some really, really insane tax revisions coming down the pike in the near future. And so I was looking at that just out of curiosity. There's a company called Nomad Capitalist. He has a really nice YouTube channel, and he talks a lot about that. You know, the idea that you can get a second passport, domicile yourself in a different country, and if you're domiciled there and you have internet businesses, then you just incorporate your business in that low tax country of origin. And you still have to pay taxes on on your income in the United States, right? If you're a U.S. citizen, you don't escape taxes. The U.S. government has their fingers in you anywhere you go. But if you are domiciled elsewhere, then you have a pretty significant tax deduction, and so you can sort of at least insulate yourself from some of the monetary hooks that the federal government has on you. So I think it's an interesting thing. A lot of new countries now have very different sort of digital nomad travel visas that you can just buy and you can get residency there. So interesting stuff. We have SV says, on the FDA site, what makes it invalid equals including that there was no adequate or approved and available alternatives. They have alternatives and other things like vitamin D with other options. So having a conversation about the emergency use authorization for the vaccine, whether the FDA actually did authorize it or not. So there's a lot of conversations about that. Thanks for that, SV. And Justin Humphrey says, keep up the great work. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. We're going to keep grinding away here, and I appreciate all your support, both from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over on YouTube. A lot of super chats. I really do appreciate all of your support. All right, my friends. So we're going to leave that segment right there. A lot of stuff on COVID. We have a couple other things that we have to fly through because my face is bothering me. But we're going to get through it today, so let's go through it. We have Attorney General Merrick Garland is now suing the state of Texas over their new abortion law. We're going to dive into this story with a headline over from the Star Tribune coming out of Austin. Said that on Thursday, the DOJ, this guy, Merrick Garland, now suing Texas because they're saying that they are in open defiance of the Constitution. So we're going to take a look at this lawsuit here. Recall that we're talking about SB 8. This is the Texas abortion law, the pro-life law that is saying that they're creating a private cause of action for anybody that performs an abortion against anybody that performs an abortion after 6 weeks when they can detect a fetal heartbeat. So I kind of butchered that a little bit. But the concept here is that Texas is now protecting life to some degree. The Supreme Court has allowed this statutory framework to move forward, which is causing abortions to cease in different parts of Texas. Many people are no longer getting the same level of abortion quality that they got previously. So the Justice Department is coming out here and saying, you're not allowed to do that. And they're filing a lawsuit against Texas specifically. Filed in federal court in Texas, they're asking a federal judge to tell Texas that the law is invalid. Merrick Garland says it is clearly unconstitutional. Justice Department argues that the law unlawfully infringes on constitutional rights of women, violates the Supremacy Clause, and federal officials are concerned that it would deprive their citizens of their constitutional rights. So we're going to go into the actual lawsuit here from Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice here in a minute. But yesterday on the show, we talked about all of the different local laws that the federal government is now stepping over, right? Inserting themselves into debates about these very important concepts. Yesterday on the show, we talked a lot about them. I sort of went through this mental checklist that I had, but I like slides and I like charts. And so since I have access to both of them, I created one. What you can see here is we've talked about all of these different issues on the show. Today, we're adding this bottom one. Local laws were passed by Texas that impact reproductive issues. The federal entity now that is stepping all over those is the Department of Justice through Merrick Garland, right? This is the SB 8 lawsuit that we're going to see, but it follows the same pattern that we've seen from other federal overstepping. We have schools and masking. Remember this? We talked about it here on this channel. Dr. Miguel Cardona over from the Department of Education is going to be investigating civil rights claims against schools that are not complying with masking requirements, right? So they're going to be investigating them. They're also using the Treasury to refund schools that are being defunded because they're not complying with state regulations against universal masks. The CDC, we talked a lot about, they came out and basically said, you private citizens, you don't have any property rights anymore, okay? We have that now. The bureaucrat in charge was Dr. Rochelle Walensky. Vaccine mandates, we saw that those were just made privately applicable through the Department of Labor, through OSHA, just made available today by Joe Biden. Publicly, we've seen for public employees, the executive branch has mandated vaccines for all government employees. That also changed today. The Department of Justice is interfering with local election rules, threatening different states like Texas for their laws. The Department of Justice also going after gun laws, like they went after Missouri when Missouri was trying to pass some gun safety, gun laws. The Department of Justice didn't like that either. And so they've just been everywhere you turn, just coming back into the states and saying, hey, we're in charge. Don't do things that are outside of our policies. So Merrick Garland is now going after Texas. Here was him today talking about his new lawsuit.
Today, after a careful assessment of the facts and the law, the Justice Department has filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas. Our position is set out in detail in our complaint. Its basis is as follows. SB 8 bans nearly all abortions in the state after 6 weeks of pregnancy, before many women even know they are pregnant, and months before a pregnancy is viable. It does so even in cases of rape, sexual abuse, or incest. And it further prohibits any effort to aid the doctors who provide pre-viability abortions or the women who seek them. The act is clearly unconstitutional under long-standing Supreme Court precedent.
All right, so basically what he just did there is he just read the first opening line of the actual lawsuit. It's a preliminary statement you can see filed in the U.S. District Court. It's 27 pages long. We're not going to go through it all. But he says it is settled constitutional law. And he cites a case from Planned Parenthood versus Casey, written in 1992 following Roe versus Wade, right? So they're citing together the two preeminent abortion cases here. And they're saying it is settled constitutional law that a state may not prohibit any woman from making the ultimate decision to terminate her pregnancy before viability. Okay, so, all right. May not prohibit any woman from making the ultimate decision to terminate her pregnancy. Okay, well, she can do it in Texas under the new law. She can still go in and terminate her pregnancy. She has to just do it before 6 weeks, before there's a fetal heartbeat. So it's okay. They're kind of prohibiting her after the 6 weeks. They are prohibiting, but not really, right? You could say they are prohibiting her after the 6 weeks, but not really, because a doctor can still abort that child after the fact, and there's almost no harm for that in the first place. If somebody finds out about that and wants to file a lawsuit against that doctor, it opens up that doctor to exposure to a $10,000 penalty. But that woman can still get an abortion. So they're talking about this right here. A state may not prohibit any woman. Okay, so Merrick Garland, yeah, a state may not prohibit any woman. So Texas isn't involved in this at all. A private person can just go sue another person for violating the law. All they did was make a new claim. And all right, so you put that in your sentence, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about something else. But he says, anyways, Texas has just done that. It enacted a statute banning nearly all abortions in the state after 6 weeks, months before the pregnancy is viable. So again, right, Texas is not really doing that. They created a statute that enables somebody else to go file a civil lawsuit against somebody who performs an abortion. But they're also really not prohibiting a woman from doing it. She can go get an abortion before 6 weeks. She can also go and get an abortion after 6 weeks, provided she can find a doctor who's willing to do that and, not get charged. So he goes through, he says, Texas enacted SB 8 in open defiance of the Constitution. The statute prohibits most pre-viability abortions, which he just read that statement, also prohibits any effort to aid or indeed intent to aid doctors who perform these abortions. Says it clearly violates the Constitution. You see what I said, what I was talking about that? He said, instead of relying on the state's executive branch to enforce the law, as has been the norm elsewhere, the state has deputized ordinary citizens who are now statutorily authorized to recover $10,000 per claim. Texas has mandated that its state judicial officers enforce this law and dispense the remedies. So they're creating new claims. It takes little imagination, according to Merrick Garland, to discern Texas's true goal, to make it too risky for an abortion clinic to operate in the state, preventing women throughout Texas from exercising their right. The law, he says, has had its desired effect. To date, abortion providers have ceased providing services prohibited by SB 8, leaving women in Texas unacceptably and unconstitutionally deprived. So they say it remains in effect. So they're acknowledging that abortions are still going on, but they're just being limited by SB 8. USA has the authority, the responsibility to ensure Texas cannot deprive individuals of their constitutional rights. That's why they are bringing suit to stop the state of Texas from passing that law. We have the government also brings the suit to protect other federal interests. And they go through this. They talk a lot about they have to sort of justify this lawsuit. Why is the federal government involved in this? It's a Texas issue. What do the feds care? Well, the feds will come in and they're going to say the federal government is implicated because Texas is involved in a lot of interstate commerce. Texas, engages in interstate business. The federal government has a lot of their tentacles in the state of Texas. They've got the Bureau of Prisons. They've got military bases. They've got NASA's over there, right? There's a lot going on there. And so if you've got a military base and some woman there wants to go get an abortion, or a birthing person wants to go get an abortion, well, Texas's law is now impacting that person who is sort of within the jurisdiction of the federal government. They're also now engaged in interstate commerce. And so that opens up the purview here to the feds. The United States, therefore, they seek declaratory judgment. They want SB 8 ruled invalid. They want injunctions stopping Texas from implementing or enforcing the law. What are their claims for relief? Why is the federal government harmed here? Well, they say under the 14th Amendment. They say that the U.S. Constitution says, that the U.S. government is the supreme government. Feds are supreme. They have the supremacy clause, that their law shall be the supreme law of the land. They say that SB 8 violates that because it deprives women of their ability to get an abortion. Therefore, it's invalid under the 14th Amendment. The supremacy clause is saying their argument makes it so that the federal government rights and their protections supersede any state rights. And here, according to Merrick Garland, the federal government believes in the right to abortion at basically, limitless. And they're going to protect that. If Texas is undermining what they perceive to be a constitutional right, they're going to step in and bring a claim. And they're going to rely on the 14th Amendment to do so, the Supremacy Clause. They also are bringing claim under preemption. They're saying that SB 8 violates the Supremacy Clause, and it is preempted because it's contrary to the 14th Amendment. Basically, the federal law, rather than being just supreme, so let's say that Texas passed this law, then the U.S. government passed a law on top of that, they could say that we're supreme. What their argument here is it's sort of the opposite, that there was already law that was enacted by the federal government that was dictated through the Supreme Court, through Casey and Roe, that is now in effect. Texas tried to slap theirs on top of it, but so they're being preempted by the federal law. Texas can't slap something on top of something that was already enacted. SB 8 conflicts and otherwise impedes the execution of the existing federal law, and it violates the Supremacy Clause because it's preempted under the federal law. And then the last claim that we have here is that it violates intergovernmental immunity. So SB 8 directly regulates the feds. Can't do that. We're supposed to work together. We're supposed to have intergovernmental immunity. Therefore, SB 8 violates that, and it is invalid. So what does the government want? They want a declaratory judgment saying that SB 8 is invalid. They want a preliminary and a permanent injunction in the state of Texas saying that Texas cannot enact any of this stuff. So private parties can't bring lawsuits, employees, agents, nobody can be involved in this. Any other relief, the court awards costs and all of that other stuff. So who signed off on this? Acting Assistant Attorney General from the DOJ, another deputy assistant, basically all of the DOJ, the federal programs, U.S. Department of Justice, the civil division, signed off on by everybody. Okay, so they're filing that lawsuit against Texas. Let's see what you have to say about these abortion issues over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got some that are queuing up in here. Avalon, nope, that was on the last segment. A lot of questions coming in on the COVID stuff. Any abortion questions? Yeah, Sergeant Bob says, Puppet Garland defies the Supreme Court. Another political prosecution, sure indication of a totalitarian regime. That's from Sergeant Bob. Good to see you. Geomancy Game says, I think this law in Texas does an excellent job at reinforcing the it takes two to tango and actually gives fathers an avenue to address their grievances with a woman's pregnancy. Though we also live in a world where men can be women, and if you question it, you're a bigot. That's true. Yeah, I know it. I'm white. I can't help it. Monster One says, Rob, you probably got COVID. You should be wearing a mask so you don't infect your watchers. You're right, I should probably quarantine from all of you. Because I got the sniffles. We have, that was from Monster One. Monster One says, these people have the nerve to invoke the Constitution after this crap Biden pulled. This lawsuit clearly violates the 10th Amendment. Another one from Jack Elias says, so why does no one ever discuss the effects of Doe versus Bolton decided the same day, which is what puts Roe versus Wade on steroids? Doe versus Bolton? I'm not sure what that one is. We have Merrick hates the Constitution, says Merrick does not care about the Constitution. Just salty. He did not become a Supreme Court justice, and he's taking it out on the Republicans. Little vendetta there, huh? Robute says, this abortion law would not be a problem if the vast majority just have sex with a condom and other contraception. That's from Robute. Yeah, we'll leave that there. Be Brave says, I think the Texas law was written very well. In my opinion, the $10,000 potential judgment should be much, much higher, though. That's from Be Brave. We have another one from Perry Masonary says, how can the Supremacy Clause apply if there is no federal law that has legalized abortion? So it's because the U.S. Supreme Court has said that it exists already. It's ingrained in this penumbra of rights that stem from the right to privacy. It is in the Constitution, says the Supreme Court. They made it up and crammed it in there, but that's what their argument is. Osak says, Rob, so in theory, I could take this lawsuit by the feds, reword it, and bring this claim over COVID rights. You could. Yeah, right. It's kind of the same argument. Want to know says, so you can get an abortion if you have $10,000, right? How is that right? So I guess, right, if you cover the cost, if you say, listen, doctor, I've got a baby I'm about to pop. It's like eight and a half months pregnant, but I don't want it. It's really inconvenient. Can you kill this thing for me? I can't do it. It has a heartbeat. It has a head. It's got a whole head of hair in there too. Yeah, but I don't want it. Can you please get rid of it? But I could get fined. Oh, how much? $10,000? That's nothing. Okay, no problem at all. I will insulate you from that. I will make sure to cover your legal fees. Just get rid of this clump of cells in my abdomen. We have another one from Thunder 7 says, the death cult Dems make me so angry when they keep playing the rape incest card when 98% of abortions are a form of birth control. Texas passed their own abortion laws, which is their legal right, upheld by the SCOTUS. Go to any of the other 49 states and get your baby killed after 6 weeks. Planned Parenthood will pay your fare as they want more and more abortions. They sell the baby parts and fetal tissue to Big Pharma. Stop imposing your demonic agenda to the religious who believe in the sanctity of life. That's from Thunder 7. Spicy comment there, Thunder. We have another one from Planned Parenthood said, the Democrats for Planned Parenthood are racist and want to engage in eugenics. They want to increase the 70 million black babies being aborted. And they don't want them to have I can't say it. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, if abortion is a medical procedure and the HIPAA protects information from being leaked, how will anyone know? Also, the federal government doesn't have standing because they clearly didn't knock anyone up. It's a good question, Jeremy. So the people bringing the lawsuits presumably are going to be the male or the counterparts to the birthing person or whatever the hell we're talking about these days. A man, right? The person, you need two people, as far as I know, to have a baby. Somebody who's a biological male and a biological woman. Unless I'm missing something, pretty sure that's how it works. I think. So I don't know what else to say about that other than the fact that the man would notice if a woman goes in with a child and comes out without a child. Would be alerted to the idea that there might be a claim there. A couple others from Monster One says, pretty sure Texas has a secession clause in their constitution. Maybe it's that time. A lot of people are moving to Texas. NY says, I think that the Texas law is unwise. First, it creates a private party interest in suing and removes standing for almost everything. I think this is unprecedented. Tactically, I think it rallies the base to the left. Republicans have a good chance to take over the House in 2022. I worry they have ruined this chance, even though the Supreme Court could be favorable. In addition, it could cause Joe to pack the court, which is also true, right? It sort of renews an issue that was mostly settled. I'm sorry, not mostly settled, but mostly not in the Democrats' quiver. Right now, they're going to be fired up over this. Abortion for them, for many over there, is like the sacrament. It is their reason for living, right? For some reason, they think that it's the idea that if that is impugned, impeded in any way, that we're going to be living in, Handmaid's Tale or something. John Delar says, I wish this issue with abortion wouldn't have come up before the midterms. It's the lifeline for the Democrats. It will energize them to go out and vote. Biden administration is going to milk it for all it's worth. I wish the Republicans would play smarter. What Republicans? They're not doing anything. All right, those were the questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Over on YouTube, Wolfgang chimed in, said, Yeonmi Park is on PragerU, asking, why does the left hate America? I think the question is wrong. The left hates proper judgment. This is why. Anti-Sem. Maybe anti-Semitic. I don't know. Good to see you, Wolfgang. We've got Marty Lund says, Brnovich need to get to work on a request for a federal court injunction against the Department of Labor yesterday. This Biden mandate needs to be dead on arrival. I saw Mark Brnovich, he's our attorney general from Arizona, who did indicate that he was going to be, contesting this, which is obviously a good thing. Lava Java Lava says, pro-life here. Again, great show, Rob. Good to see you, Lava Java. Thanks for being here. Love that you're here. Been around for a long time. Texas here with a couple nice super chats, no question. Shout out from Texas High Five, Texas Clap, I think. We have Jane Favavras subscribed. And we have Zulu's in the house, says, I got held up. Please recap the entire show right quick. Okay, thanks. Joe Biden passed national vaccine mandates. It's getting crammed down most of Americans' throats. Merrick Garland is suing Texas over abortion. We haven't got to the third segment yet, but there's a very bad district attorney who did some pretty bad things. That's all you need. We have Elisa Zamansky says, can we file a lawsuit against the government? There's no data to support the vaccines work. It's against our constitutional rights. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits. Yes, Lisa, a lot going against the government. It's just a matter of time. I think you're going to see it start with the attorneys generals. So you're going to see different AGs from Texas, Arizona, probably Florida, who are all going to be combating this head on. And I think that it's going to be well worth it. Great questions. Thank you for all of the support, both from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over on YouTube. I appreciate all of the great questions. The great conversation. All right, we're going to move into the next topic, our last topic for the day. All right, we're going to talk about a bad district attorney, a bad DA. Mark Jones, a prosecutor, a district attorney, the person who's supposed to be going after criminals and keeping the streets clean, got indicted. Criminally indicted. 9 different counts. Let's take a look at some of them. 2 counts of influencing a witness. We have 2 counts of bribery, 2 counts of violation of oath by a public officer. We've got 2 counts of attempted violation of oath by a public officer. And another one, subornation of perjury, influencing a witness, and many others. He took office on January 1, 2021, and the indictment came for all of these criminal acts during his first 8 months in office. So, prosecutor of the year, 9 counts of misconduct. He's out from Muskogee County District Attorney. His name is Mark Jones. He got totally indicted. Now he's facing a suspension. All taking place, he was under investigation by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And the case was brought to grand jury by the Georgia Attorney General's Prosecution Division. So we're going to take a look at this indictment. Like, this is a prosecutor. Okay, people look at defense attorneys and like, you scum. How could you represent those monsters? Every one of them is guilty. You have a prosecutor like this who's charged with many different offenses: influencing witnesses, perjury, violation of an oath of office, bribery, attempted violation of an oath of office, another attempt, another influencing a witness, another violation. Okay. All indicted September 7th. It came out. Muskogee Superior Court. Let's go through it. Count 1. Influencing witnesses. Mark Preston Jones, did knowingly attempt to persuade Corporal Sherman Hayes' testimony, trying to influence a witness by means of corruption. There was a case of Georgia versus Farrell, an official proceeding. He told Corporal Sherman that he should testify that Elijah Farrell believed that the deceased victim, Sarah Holtrop, was, quote, cheating on Farrell, thereby providing motive evidence so that Farrell could be charged with murder, contrary to the laws of the state. Oh. So he goes and tells a corporal, why don't you just make this up and say that that person who we're charging with the crime, Sarah, the person that is dead now, we'll just say that Sarah was cheating on this person. Why do we need to do that? Well, we need a motive. How did she get killed? Well, he was mad that she was cheating on him. Was he cheating on her? No. Well, say it anyways. So obviously that officer didn't do that and reported him instead. Another case here. Perjury. Did attempt to induce perjury from Sherman Hayes. Same thing there. Charged with murder. Substantial step toward the commission of perjury. We have another person here. Willfully violate the terms of his oath of office by influencing witnesses. We have another one here. Let's see. Shenica Jones Terry. On the 25th of March, we had Mark Preston Jones tried to bribe this woman, Shenica Jones Terry. A person acting on behalf of the state offered her $1,000 to influence her performance as the assistant district attorney. $1,000 in exchange for obtaining a murder conviction, which is a part of her employment. So, I don't know what that one was. Like, was he just offering her a bonus? Don't know what that one was about. Not a lot of information there, right? If she works for him and he's like, listen, you go get a conviction on that, you're going to get a fat bonus. That's not appropriate in a prosecution office, right? Some pretty perverse incentives. They should be doing things in the interest of justice, not in the interest of money. But you can at least understand that, right? Another one here, $1,000 to Kimberly Schwartz, influencing her performance, announcing ready on a murder trial on a case that was not ready for trial. Uh-oh. So she says, there's a case coming up, and Mark Jones says, I need you to go handle this murder trial. Well, we're not ready for it. Well, I'll give you $1,000. Just go do it. We're not ready for that. So, not okay. Another $1,000 went to attorney Shenica Jones' office to obtain a murder conviction. Let's see. So the district attorneys can only take lawful compensation. They can't take money outside of the ordinary. Did this again with Kimberly Schwartz, also told her another $1,000 to obtain a murder conviction. Another one, influencing a witness, knowingly used a threat and engaged in misleading conduct with the intent to influence Chris Bailey in a victim impact statement, right? So a victim impact statement, somebody who's been harmed by criminality, they're going to write a statement. And here it sounds like this prosecutor was trying to bend that towards a certain outcome. The last count, count 9, willfully and intentionally violated his oath of office by not assisting Chris Bailey, a victim of a crime, and not ensuring that Chris Bailey, a victim of the crime, was apprised of the rights afforded him under the law. So that all was from Mark Jones, and he's got some troubling things going on in his record. Jones was booked in the Muskegon County Jail 3 p.m., released 7 p.m. the same day. Upon his release, he spoke to the news. He said, oh, I'm just kind of shocked, you know. I've been on the job 9 months. I fight really hard for the people. We're trying cases, and then this happened, so I need to get a copy of the indictments that we just read to see what they're saying, you know, what they're alleging. I haven't seen a copy of that. I've only seen a list of the charges, so that's the extent of my knowledge. I don't know anything else about it other than that. I didn't take any bribe. I didn't influence any witnesses. I didn't try to suborn perjury. I don't know what they're talking about. Now, this guy, you know, you can believe it or not, he's got some other pending issues that he's working through. Most recent indictment comes as Jones is already in legal hot water, facing 2 felony charges on an unrelated matters, scheduled for trial on September 13th for multiple charges related to damage that he caused to the Columbus Civic Center during a taping of the campaign video. He got a DUI charge November 2019. Case is currently pending. He admits he ran a non-traditional campaign. And he said, if convicted, those charges will disqualify him from office. And so he has a quote here, not really appropriate. It says, "We will be ready. We will have both barrels pointed at whoever wants to bring that case." What? You shouldn't be shooting people. "We are going to fight hard because we're not going to let anything jeopardize this DA seat. We took it for the people, going to remain in the people." All right. Also has had a little bit of problem. He touted his record as never losing a case as a private lawyer, but not so quick when he became a prosecutor in April. Failed to get a conviction in a murder case. Jury hung 8-4 for acquittal. He drew the ire of Superior County Judge Ron Mullins twice. Mullins said, "Hey, why did you post something on Facebook saying that you wished you could tell the jury about Johnson's prior criminal convictions?" So this DA goes on Facebook and says, "God, it'd be great if I could just tell all these people about Johnson's prior criminal convictions. If the jury just knew about that, they'd come out here and find it easily." And there's reasons why they don't know about that, right? It's called overly prejudicial value. There's rules of evidence called Rule 403 that says if it's overly probative and if it's overly prejudicial and it's not probative, then that stuff stays out. So this prosecutor comes back in and says, well, I'm just going to talk about it on Facebook anyways. The judge comes back out and says that's highly inappropriate. But this DA says, well, I have the First Amendment. Judge asked him delete the post. He said it was coming from his personal account. And then he prosecuted a man in August accused of different child crimes, bad child crimes. Superior Court judge admonished Jones multiple times for using a slang term for male reproductive organs. Defense attorney Michael Garner moved for a mistrial during closing arguments, but Jones, it didn't matter. He was later acquitted. The jury just acquitted the guy in general. So we have Mark Jones, who is just the worst kind of prosecutor out there, bribing people, doing anything to try to secure a conviction. He got indicted. That's another bad district attorney who is seeking getting familiar with the justice system, shall we say. Let's take a look over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, see what kind of questions we have in here before we wrap up for the day. A couple more came in on this one. Let's see. All right. We have Thunder7 says he looks like an Antifa thug. Who hired him? So it was a really interesting case here. Apparently, the former DA had to resign over some problems. There was a weird election. Somebody else got kind of booted out. This guy got kind of elected just by default. Mark Jones says, you should see the things I got away with here on the channel. Be careful about that, Mark. You're in hot water already. Geomancy Game says, our country is only going to change once heads start to roll, peaceful heads, and these people who they think are untouchable start being prosecuted. A snowball's chance in hell of it happening, but I can't help but grin and these slime balls facing the meat grinder that is the justice system. A little taste of his own medicine there. Osak says, Rob, thought prosecutors had total immunity. This DA messes up somewhere really bad. Never thought that this could happen. Well, yeah, they have a lot of immunity, but not for that. Want to know says, Rob, you're totally prejudiced. You enjoy way too much when a prosecutor gets caught. You get to report on it. You absolutely enjoy this too much, but should be allowed to have your fun. That is true. I do like those stories. It's always good to see the bad guys go down. Real Butte says, who the most ethical DA is, Kamala Harris, Mark Jones, Kim Gardner. Note, don't talk to the prosecutor as they want to screw you over. Only talk to your lawyer. It's good advice. We have one final one here from Sergeant Bob says, woo, takes the heat off the popo. Just kidding. Yeah, so Sergeant Bob is going, finally, Rob, gosh, can you leave us alone over here? I mean, enough already. Go beat up on the prosecutors. We did that today, Sergeant Bob. And I appreciate you chiming in on that. Let's see, anything over from YouTube? We have one from Lauren S. says, solid recap. Thank you for that. Yeah, crammed a lot in there real fast. But that was it for the questions over from locals and all the support on YouTube. Everybody, thank you so much for that. We're going to wrap it up right there. I want to welcome a couple new people who are supporting the community over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got Rod the Odd, who's now in the house, very grateful, signed up for the year, along with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not a crime in the house. BJJ is not a crime, which is absolutely true. You know, one of the biggest tragedies of the pandemic was I started going back to mixed martial arts, I think it was summer of 2019. I got a couple months in. A couple months where you get through all of the hurt. When you get back into mixed martial arts and you're ripping each other's arms out of each other's sockets, you have joint pain, and especially when you're me now, I'm getting older. And so you sort of work through that. 2 months came and went. Then we sort of, a couple months went by. We started to lock down. They started locking down, and the rest was history. Major bummer. Anyways, I'm glad you're here. Captain Jim is also in the house, also signed up for the year with BJJ. Sincerely, Sam is in the house along with me. Love dogs. Last week, Miss Tree of Life, West Pole, Sir Kexalot, Teresa Simone, Dave Tube, Avalon Acres, Timbo, and Don M911 all signed up. If you want to join the community, it's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Appreciate your support. We have a monthly locals meetup coming up Saturday, October 2nd, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's a Zoom meeting, a lot of fun. Come, keep your cameras on, keep them off. We have a good conversation because we're building a community. We're having a good time talking politics, talking life, sharing strategies, getting to know one another, putting names to faces, and connecting. That's what it's all about. As the government continues to try to disconnect us, we stay together. And I appreciate all of you being here today for a very lively show. We're going to be back here again tomorrow to do it all again. I want to make sure that you're here with us. It's at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and for that one Florida man out there. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.